So welcome, I'm G.A. Bartik and welcome to 4 Keys to Success in today's marketplace. And I'd like to thank you for being here, and I'd also like to thank Nevada State Bank, my bank, for giving me the opportunity to really share with you what I think are some of the keys that I've seen top performing salespeople, but more importantly, small business owners use to create success in today's unique marketplace. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about really what is your skill as a business owner. It's really about communicating, isn't it? I really want to talk about what does communication look like. And we're going to talk about how important communication is, because really it's how can people communicate that really creates success in your business. So take a look at this. What does this number represent to you? 90.8. Now that may not mean a lot to you, but if I said, hey, what does 9.2% mean to you? And that is today's unemployment rate. People constantly talk about the unemployment rate versus the employment rate. So 90.8, that's the employment rate, but all we hear about is what? The inverse and the negative, that there's a 9.2% unemployment rate in the country. So I just want to talk about what are some of the small nuances that you can use when you're communicating to your customers and also to your team to help create better results. I mean, I think things are a little bit different today. Would you agree than they were a couple years ago? I think Albert Einstein said it well when he said, the significant problems we face cannot be solved with the same level of thinking that created them. So I think it's going to take a little bit different solutions to solve some of today's problems. The question you have to ask yourself are, what are some of the significant problems you're faced with? Some of the significant problems that I see small businesses that they're faced with today is, one is, how do you maintain and improve high quality service? Now think about it, especially if you're a small business owner, you live and breathe in your company every single day. But if you have employees, how do you get them to maintain that same high level of quality of service that you have? I mean, Jeffrey Gitomer, who's been on some of these webinars with Nevada State Bank, says it really well too. He says, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And I truly believe that too, is that I don't believe that your job is to sell anything to anybody, but your job is to truly create a unique, different, but more importantly, a positive buying experience for you and your customers. So how do you maximize new business opportunities? A lot of times I see companies spend a lot of time, energy, and money on trying to develop new business opportunities. The key is, how are you truly maximizing them? And I'll share with you a couple of tips that we think will really help you do that. The next is, how do you compete with more urgency and intensity? And how do you get your team players to be doing that with you? Then how do you continue to grow accounts too? And then finally, it's really about this new buying paradigm. And over the last few years, I mentioned earlier, I think that there's been a shift in the buyer. I think today's buyer is more educated, they're doing more research. I think they're also less loyal than before, but more importantly, they're a little bit nervous when they're making that buying decision. They're looking at, right now, if I make this decision, if I make a wrong decision, could that possibly cost me my job? So I think it's really important to really understand your buyer and understand that, yes, we have to create a different, unique, but more importantly, a really truly positive buying experience with them when they're interacting with you and your company. Because there's a good chance that if they're talking to you at 11 o'clock in the morning, they may be talking to your competitor at 1 o'clock. And what are you doing to really maximize and create a different experience in your meeting versus the meeting they have at 1 o'clock? So a little bit about who I am. I'm GA, I'm the president of Outsell Consulting. And we have had the opportunity to be the author of 2 now best-selling books. One is If You're Not Outselling, You're Being Outsold. And the second is Silver Bullet Selling, which is 6 critical steps to opening up more relationships and closing more business. And also, we just had the opportunity too, that just got produced in Mandarin. So any of you like to get a copy in Mandarin, love to get that out to you too. It's been a 43 weeks on the Amazon bestseller list. But I thought was interesting too is somehow my really cool bullets, when it got translated into Mandarin, somehow they turned into flowers. I'm not quite sure how that translated, but. So what do we specialize in? We really specialize in improving the performance of sales and customer service teams, helping organizations create a unique and positive buying experience, but more importantly, instilling processes and habits that lead to bottom line results. Some of the clients we work with are shown here. We also work with Google, Cox Communication, Amegy Bank, Vector Bank, C.H. Robinson, but we also work with a lot of small, independent, small businesses too. So what are some of these keys to success I've been talking about? Well, I really want to talk today about 4 of them. Key number 1, know your client. What do you think I mean by that? Well, I think that People buy emotionally, but they rationalize it logically. So it's this emotional versus logical need. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, I wear a suit every single day when I work. So there I was trying on a new suit. You know when you put the suit on in the dressing room, they make you come out and they make you stand on a little pedestal. They put you in one of those three-way mirrors that shows all my imperfections. Well, so there I was standing in one of those mirrors. The tailor's kind of poking around, fitting up my suit, getting it to fit correctly. And this young lady walks by and says, "Wow, that suit makes you look thin." At which point I said, "I'll take it." But when I got home, I sit there and showed my wife, I said, "Honey, look at my beautiful new suit. I got it on sale." Now, why did I tell my wife I got it on sale? Folks, I bought it emotionally, but I rationalized it logically. Now, think to yourself, have you ever presented a solution to a prospect or a customer and it made total logical sense? It could either save them a ton of money, it could save them time, or it could really help them get to where they want to go. And it made all types of logical sense to go with that proposal. But do they always do it? No. Even though it made logical sense, why? Because people don't buy logically. They buy emotionally. And you need to understand their emotional needs. That is key to being really good in sales. And most of the time, people do not take care of the emotional need. They simply take care of the logical need. Have you ever said or thought, you know what, I heard one of your employees say, you know what, I fixed the problem. Why is the customer still upset? Well, it's probably because you didn't take care of their emotional need. The next is really listening to understand versus listening to respond. Let me explain what I mean by that too, because this is a key piece here. I mean, how do most people listen? Have you ever talked to somebody and as you're talking, they're going, I mean, they're trying to jump in when you're talking. What are they really saying? I think they're saying, you know what, why don't you be quiet, because what I have to say is more important than what you're saying. So there I was, my wife, Kelly, gives me a call. And I can tell something's a little bit wrong. I said, "Hey, honey, what's going on?" And she says, "Honey, I'm a little bit upset with your son, Jack." All of a sudden, Jack's my son. And I said, "Well, what's going on?" And she says, "I just got to drop him off at tennis practice. And when I got to his tennis lesson, I got him out of the car. I realized he didn't have any shoes on." So I asked the obvious question. I'm like, "Honey, well, how come when you put Jack in the car, why didn't you look at his feet?" Now, let me ask you this. Was I listening to respond or listening to understand? And how well do you think my wife appreciated my advice? So make sure you're listening to really, truly understand versus listening to respond to your customer. So I see a lot of you like that listen to understand versus listen to respond. I appreciate some of the comments and questions. And just let you know at the end of this, we'll definitely be able to answer some of your questions. Then the next key is talking about discovery. It's really about asking the right questions and listening. It's about really having a process in place that really lets you understand the customer's current situation, their desired situation, and also what are their expectations of you, your product, or your service too, before you ever present a solution to them. So it's really about taking the time to understand them and have a process in place that allows you to do the discovery you need to. Because here's what I think. I think everybody thinks their situation is totally different and unique. Would you agree? I mean, how many times have you worked with a customer and they said, you know what, hey, you might have worked with another small dry cleaners before, but our dry cleaner, we're a little bit different. I see a lot of you think the same thing too. I think everybody thinks their situation is totally different and unique. So as a salesperson or as a business owner, you have to take the time to really let them communicate to you what is their difference. Even though you might see them as the exact same, they think they're different. So let's move on to key number 2. Every client or every prospect knows what you sell. And I think this is key. And a lot of companies I work with, we take a lot of time going back to their current customers and really making sure that this current customer really truly know what you sell. Are clients buying products you sell from another vendor? And think about it. Think about all your clients you have. Are they potentially purchasing products and services from another vendor? I recently just moved over to Nevada State Bank. And when I called my previous banker and told her that I was moving over here, her first question was, well, GA, how come? And I said, well, you know we had an issue with depositing checks. And Nevada State Bank has offered us the scanner, or we can deposit our checks right from our office. My admin never needs to leave. And I thought, this is fantastic. When I told her that, she's like, well, GA, we have that too. I was like, Eleanor, how come you never told me about it? And you know what her answer was? Well, GA, you never asked. So think about it. Are there products and services that your clients are potentially buying from somebody else? Do they truly know everything that you sell and how it could benefit them? Then maybe you might have to reposition yourself with your clients. And how you go about doing that, you need to go back to your customers and ask, do you know what we sell? You might do that via surveys. You can do it with, what do you think we do type of talking to them. Or you can actually just go back to them and apologize and let them know, you know what? I think I've done a really poor job of really communicating everything that it is we do. I just want to make sure you're aware of that in case a need comes up. I want to make sure that we can provide you with all the products and services that can really help you with your situation. So key number 2 is really knowing that all your clients know specifically what it is you sell. And just as I'm looking at some of the comments, it seems like some people are thinking the same thing too, is that, something that when I'm talking to small business, something they really haven't thought about. You all know that your current clients are your best source of new business sometimes. The key is, are they potentially buying something from somebody else that you could be selling them, they could be using you, something they already like? So key number 1 is really knowing your client. Key number 2 is, does every client know what you sell? And key number 3 is using a proven process. So what do I mean by that? As we work with top performers around the world and with small business owners, the one thing we find is that people don't just wing it. They usually have a very, very specific process that they use, and they do it over and over and over again. Let me kind of explain what I mean by that. See this right here? I don't know if you can see this. This is a 3x5 card. Would you all agree that this 3x5 card is a little bit smaller than my head? That it would pretty much be impossible to cut a hole in this 3x5 card large enough to put my head through? Well, let me show you that if you have the right process in place, they can take something that looks virtually impossible to do and, more importantly, be able to do it under pressure with potentially, several hundred people watching you. Can you produce and execute something that's somewhat difficult to do and do it with the pressures on when there's money on the table, when you're in front of a prospect or client? Do you have the right process in place to be able to do that? So I just showed you a moment ago that I had a 3x5 card. And if I've done my process correctly, I can take that 3x5 card and I now have a hole in it large enough to put my head through. Now give me a ooh, give me a ah. All right, now how was I able to do that? Because I had a process in place. And that's really the key to having a process. And that's kind of the reason I wrote the book. It was originally called No Silver Bullet to Selling. Because I used to be asked all the time, hey G, what's a silver bullet? What's the one thing I could say that's going to help my customers buy? And I used to think to myself, you know what? There really is no silver bullet. So originally when my brother and I, Paul, wrote the book, the original title was No Silver Bullet to Sales. Because I didn't think there was any magical phrase that you could say at the end of a sales call where the heavens would part, that light would shine down in your prospect, you'd hear that heavenly music, and you would ask a question, they would say, oh, I'll take it. But when we started observing business owners, started observing top performers, we interviewed about 6,000 top performers and customers. We have about 33,000 pages of notes. And it's really a step-by-step process in the book to how do you create success on purpose. And it was really fascinating in doing the research that top performers and top business owners, they don't wing it. They have a very, very specific process in place, and they simply use the process, and they get their team to use the process too. So what are some steps of the process? Step number 1 is pre-call planning. I think the best indicator of the success of any meeting is truly the pre-call planning that happens before the meeting. Think about it. When does your pre-call planning happen?